Hi there, Randi Green here. Welcome to the first tutorial of the Food, Health and Environment project, where I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the processes that we are going to encounter and some of the things that we need to learn. This is a tutorial, so this is about something we need to learn. I've touched ground with some of what we call the sciences behind nutrition in the Transition Science course, the advanced work with nutrition that connects to the advanced work with the rotundum. So you begin with the advanced work with the rotundum course, and then you go into working with the advanced work with nutrition, because these two things are interconnected, since that food is connected to the reality field, is energetically connected to the reality field. Because of that, I will also suggest that you do the new reality challenge course material that goes both first with the free material, and then it goes into the free materials, the new reality challenges course 1 and 2, understanding the new reality programs, which I explain is kind of, they never succeeded in implementing these programs, but they're still running. There are still residuals of them. There are still effects inside a reality, which will fizzle out throughout 2023, and then new reality programs will come in. Whatever they are, of course, I will convey that later on when we know what these are. Now we are in this overlapping period between 2022 and 2023. I would also recommend you do the new reality course on the sun. Those of you who did the Changemaker podcast last year, the sign up for that group, you have already got the challenges of the sun. That was part of your subscription last year. But the new course is the stargates, and that becomes important when we talk about reality field and reality field network that are connected to the food that we eat. And that will connect to the different reality field changes that we are going to unfold throughout 2023. We have also begun the energetic clearing of the lineages, which I am contemplating on whether or not I should do as a separate course, because there will be a lot of high order sciences involved in that. And then that will be part of the new reality field challenges course material. So we have the sun, the stargates, and now we do the clearing process, clearing activation processes of 2023 until 2026, where that shuts down technically 2025, where we then do the jump into the 2025 timeline. So this is kind of the prospected ideas for now. But here with the food, I want to go in a different direction, because there are things we need to learn. And the reason why I kind of start here is because I just done some clearing work, and I removed a very humongous, disgusting elemental being from my stomach. I have had issues with my stomach for a couple of days. And again, when we talk about where this thing comes from and how does it enter into our field, sometimes it actually comes from the reality field itself, because I am clearing a lot of levels, and by that I could have dragged it in from some older reality field levels that I'm connected to, or it could have come my way in some way or other, being in contact with family members or other people or what have you. What I want to talk about here is the let me just resume a little bit, because in a manner, it's not as important as where does it come from. It's more important to understand what are the implications of that elemental being. So that's what I want to address. As in a free association, okay, I got that elemental being. It's not as important where it came from, because now it's gone. It didn't like being in my energy system. It did create a lot of havoc. Let me put it that way. It affected my mental field, and it affected other levels of my perception level, shut me down, dragged in a lot of energetic parasites, and created a lot of molecular disturbances, including upsetting my stomach and the natural processes that I normally have. So that there are repercussions to these elemental beings. It's not just, just remove the elemental. No, they affect us on a molecular level. So that's part of when we ignite the new reality grid work and network of the outer domain, which I explain in the new reality challenges from the Stargates. So you get that there. And you'll say, well, I put it all here and there, because every time I work with information, it's a pillar of information. It has so many layers to it that it must be done in its own course material. Each one has 10 podcasts where I explain these dynamics. So that's for you to go and look there. I can also recommend the podcast series I made on the Systemic Energetic Awareness Forum on YouTube on past lives. Absolutely worth looking into. A lot of good information is given there. I will also recommend you do the higher order systemic energetic new reality challenge updates, which you can subscribe to as well. There I go into the psychological processes and a little bit of updates in our reality field. But for now, it's just kind of, that's probably better to be put into science material, and then just do the psychological processes where I then use the science material and put it into the updates so that the background is in its course on its own, and then the processes from it will be part of the update. So you got two choices. You have got the change maker where we work with the transition sciences inside the base program, and then you got the higher order systemic energetic awareness updates that works with what we call the psychological or the inner processes. So that's all up to you to choose how far you want to go with this. So here in what I want to address here is based upon some of the experiences I had in Australia, because the world is to a large degree beginning to show signs of what I experienced in Australia. Australia has always been where you see things into this reality field. It's kind of it's the doorstep to the Western world. Yes, we have India, and yes, we have Indonesia, and we have China, whatever, but they are connected to a different jurisdiction, different races, different groups of alien humanoids that are here. And I say alien humanoids because they don't belong here. They never did. And that's why they're so dissimilar. And those of you who live in Indonesia say, well, I'm kind of what you are and what have you. But again, this is a different lineage. The seedings are different. It's from a different, jurisdictional perspective, and eventually all of that it's like not the half moon, because that's the Islamic worlds, but kind of but it is like a banana that goes from Indonesia and all the way up to Russia, and eventually that will shift, and then we will see what that will be in the future, or it will be flooded or something, whatever will happen. And that's why I'm not touching ground with it, because it's not important, because that's so dissimilar from us that it will segregate. Either it will be emptied out, it will segregate, or it will change, or it becomes something else, or whatever. And then we'll see when that time comes. Always focus on what's most important right now. And that means that the few of you that are living in Indonesia and love Bali and love Java and love whatever, perhaps at some point you should focus on looking into, is it really so nice, and what is actually going on there? Because there's a lot of stuff going on in the 8th dimension in Indonesia that is of very unpleasant levels of our reality field. And thereby, yes, you have the paradise as the outer holographic overlay to invite tourists, so there can be harvesting and other things going on from these races that have no legal right to be here. And that's why when people say, oh, I would love to go and visit and do whatever, I say, always look into these holiday paradises. There is often something to it. There's often a reason why it is a shit show. When you come home, you feel kind of replenished because you've been in the sun, right? But now if the sun is not giving us that energy, then perhaps some of you will actually feel what is really going on behind the scenes and who is actually harvesting you, all depending on how sensitive you are. The clones will not make any difference, whatever. But the rest of us that do have built an energy system, we need to be observant of where we go and why we choose to go, and not just play by the old playbook we used to do 10 years ago. Oh, I remember I went to that holiday paradise 10 years ago, and that was so cool. I want to go there again. Yeah, you might experience that that's not so cool anymore. It looks the same. It kind of is the same when you come there. But after a couple of days, you might notice, probably not the same anymore. Probably my last vacation here. And there's a little bit of a rule. And that's why those of you who do travel, I will recommend you kind of make airplane tickets or travel tickets or train tickets or whatever, however you want to travel, and don't go into this whole kind of carbon dioxide footprint using airplanes, because they're going to change. There will come a lot of new technology there, so that will be solved. But the point is that there is this rule, as in kind of when you enter into jurisdiction where you're technically not invited or allowed to be, you have maximum 2 days. You kind of get the warning when you get there. You're tired. You're kind of a little bit, why am I tired? Oh, that's probably because it was a long journey or whatever. Then you have the second day where you begin to get the signs. You will have different accidents or incidents. You will have things that not really, you will go out eat, and you will eat at a restaurant, and you'll feel completely tired afterwards. You kind of say, yeah, the food was nice, but I feel crap now. Why is that? Or whatever that will surface. And then that's the warning signs. And if you don't get the shit out of there, the heck out of there on day 3, or preferably at nighttime, day 2, if you don't get out on day 3, well, legally you have got all the signs. So thereby they have the rights to harvest you to the ground. So that's kind of a new understanding of, okay, that's environment and health, right? We need to take care of our health. When it comes to food, because that's where I want to go because of that elemental. And again, I kind of based it on my experience in Australia, which I feel in many ways were a prelude to the changes that our world is going to go through. There were other stuff going on that were part of what we call cleaning up processes, because Australia shifted into the banana of Indonesia, Asia, China, whatever. While I was there, I saw the science of it. I got the information of it. I was part of assisting a lot of the old colonizing races that were trying to change that prospected shift. They were trying to fight against it. They lost the battle. We lost that one in many ways in 2019, when I was told, as I left for the airport with my dear friend, when she brought me there, I was told, you're no longer welcome here. You're no longer welcome here. That was just the end of it. You have done what you could for the ones that were part of what used to be part of Europe and the older factions, but you are no longer welcome here. We are now taking over down here. So that's why, even though I loved being in Australia, and I had a lot of very unfortunate inner incidents and experiences, I also had that beautiful, loving friend that was with me, whom I lived. And as you know, she and I has gone through a lot of stuff that was very unpleasant, but we came through it, and she has always been very dear to me and a good friend with a high level of integrity, just to put that in, because I know I sometimes focus on the experiences and not as much with whom I experienced it with, but that's because technically I feel that's my privacy, and I will share what needs to be shared if it has a contextual meaning, but I will not share it if it doesn't have a contextual meaning. But it has here, because one of the things that she really enjoyed was takeaways and eating out. And you see, I'm not really, here in Denmark, the takeaway is not really part of our culture. It has become eating out, not so much something I did. I've been out a little bit of here and there, being invited out on dates and things, but not really part of my upbringing. So that was a little bit of a new thing. And my general experience is, yeah, it's too expensive. And yes, it's nice food, but should we really put that money into it? Well, we can go down to the store and buy something that's cheaper, right? So that's kind of my commoner base program, logical, grown up in a family with not a lot of money, so thereby not really used to this surplus, this luxury of going out eating on a day night. It had to be something special. It had to be an occasion. It had to be celebrating a birthday or whatever, not just going out because, yeah, I don't want to cook today. Let's do takeaway. And yeah, I don't want to cook today because I had a long, hard day at the office. So let's go out eat. So I kind of have that good experience together, which it can be. So we had that going sometimes to the local where we were eating. And I had a lot of experiences there while we were eating there, aside from all the people and all what was going on at that in 2017 and 18, where I was there. I'm not mentioning the city, but where we were living at the time. I was not activated to the same degree I am today. I'm pretty sure my experience will be very dissimilar, but she was good at taking me. She was very kind and good at taking me to these experiences, which I appreciate. I highly appreciate it because she was so good to me. So we went both to cafes and restaurants and takeaways, and she really, really took good care of me and made sure that I had everything I needed. So very loving, very kind. And in that understanding that she did that to actually do good by me, then it was a little bit kind of when they went there as like this ungrateful child, right? Because I had all of these experiences and come in and for instance, if we were to sit at the table, I would say, we have to sit at that table. We can't sit at that table. And it was just, well, it's good. You got the view out in the window. Yeah, we can't sit there because the person that sat there before, whatever technology was connected, is still in the field on that chair. So if we sit there, they will get the imprint of that technology. And by that, we will have the hassle to clear out that technology, because if there's an imprint in our field, then the technology can recreate itself using our configuration to reestablish itself. So that's the problem with imprint. So you already kind of see, yeah, that's the first difficulty, right? Are you to sit there or there? Where are you to sit? Because you don't know who has been sitting in that chair beforehand. And that goes with nature parks, that goes on the beach, that goes wherever. You need to look for these imprints. That goes when you go into the train, where you sit on the seat in the train, or if you do the bus, or whatever you're doing, or you borrow a car from someone else. There's a lot of alien technology connected to cars today. There's cubes above them. It is really difficult to learn to navigate in these extra understandings of reality. And you will ask, is this the same in the States? Not to the same degree as Australia, because Australia is the wild west of different colonizing species that are insectoid, reptoid, and avian. And there are not so many mammals as we have up in the northern hemisphere and further up. So they are all very territorial. So it's all run by different forms of technology, but it was a good learning lesson. So that was the first. Okay, we can sit there because nobody sit there. There's no technology there. Then there was the next thing with when you do get food others have prepared for you, their energy is in the food they have prepared. So if you kind of had, as I experienced in a cafe that we went to, if you kind of go into that cafe where the cafe owner actually had befriended my friend, and they were actually on good friendly terms, so to speak, as a cafe owner, and her coming there often. She was what we could call an Orion following angelic. Probably today I would say a little bit of a Black Lilith. She had all of that black spider kind of energy connected to her. And if she had prepared the food, that energy was in it. So if we ate that food, we would then get the imprint of her energy system. And by eating it, it will then connect to our intestines. It will then begin to work with our molecular state and our absorption of energy units, which would then, because we know the stomach is connected to the mind field due to the stem cells and the old type of cells that are in the stomach that are similar to some of the stem cells of the brain, which creates this bridge, the gut brain connection, where what we eat affects the processes of our brain, right? So that's a little bit kind of unfortunate when we talk about, okay, I just want to go out and eat and have some good food. Yes, but if you're kind of getting food from someone who has a very negative or dark light technology, well, then perhaps that's not the place to go and eat. And then you go with the other ones that are these little kind of more insectoid type of beings in humans, all depending on what it is. If you go Japanese, you have a different variation of the insectoids. If you go Chinese, you have another variation of the insectoids. If you go actually vegan, you will have another group of the insectoids. So you need to understand which group am I here dealing with. You know that by the symbols of their establishment, you know that when you get in there, are you welcome or you don't feel welcome? Do you kind of feel this in your face, you're not welcome type of energy? Then you don't go there, no matter, oh, I would really love that soup. Yeah, too bad. You're not going there because you're not welcome here. You have to find another place, and you have to change, you have to course correct and just say, reality, right? But that's the challenge as well when we talk about these things about food. Especially if we go out and buy food that others have prepared for us, then we are literally in their jurisdiction, in their establishment, in their field, in connection with their lineages, in connection to whoever faction is behind them, and in connection with whatever's going on there. Especially when we pay for something, we are having an exchange rate that is not always just about food and money that are being exchanged. Sometimes there's more to it, so we need to be observant. Okay, so if we kind of go with this, another one we experienced, we had been in the woods and we came home, we went to this establishment where we wanted to buy some fruit that were organic grown, that were part of not a farmer's market, but similar to it. And she went in there and they came out with a lot of good fruit. And I just looked at it and said, there's so much insectoid energy here from that faction. I'm sorry, I can't eat it. And she was just kind of, well, these are really good plumes. And so again, it's difficult, right? So what are you to do with that food? Are you then to eat it, or are you to toss it, or are you to give it away? What do you do with it, right? So these were the learning processes. And I'm just saying here, it was not because my friend was stupid or anything. It was just a complete new level of understanding, which many of you are also learning as you go along, especially if you're around me or choose to be around me. You will see, well, there are advantages to have that expanded awareness of what's going on in a reality field, but it definitely also has its limitation. It's like the more you expand, the more you activate, the more you actually get limited inside the base program. But that's kind of a law because you're shifting out of the base program. This is no longer your playground. You have now entered into a different playground where there are different rules and there are different reality dynamics and there are different ways of being human. So that's the choice we make. And I will say, as long as you're in the fourth cycle, that's where it's difficult. When you get out of the fourth cycle, the battle, the jurisdictional battles, the whole respect of jurisdictions, going into the trials or whatever you're doing, that's the difficult part. Once you get into the fifth cycle, then you will be pointed in a different, because your perception field will be different, your expansion field will be different, the reality dynamics will be different, and thereby you will be more steered towards what we call fifth cycle humans, fifth cycle establishments, and fifth cycle possibilities inside the base program. There will become more and more of them. Right now, there are few, but as more and more do the shift in 2025, we will get more and more fifth cycle establishments. And there, the rules are different. There, we operate in a different manner that are run by cubes, that are run by scanning devices that will then go in and scan you, say, is this a hostile person? No, it's not. Is it a preservable? Yes. Then we will not interfere. Is it a non-preservable? Then we will set that kind of motion scanning in that person should not go into this establishment because he or she does not belong there. So there will be no battle. There will just be this scanning, and then people will get in their heads, you're not welcome here, in a more subtle way, instead of in the fourth cycle, when you get that, you have an insectoid in your face that are battling you, or some kind of scavenger that comes in and challenge you, or whatever is going on that makes it very difficult, at least for a person like me that has the ability to see these critters and these original races that are in the fourth dimension. Because once I enter in, because I operate in the fourth dimension, there are non-locality in the fourth dimension. So the moment I go into an establishment, it's the same as I go into their jurisdiction, because they have the expanded fourth dimension into that establishment. So there is the base program version of it. That's the front. And then you have the fourth cycle entities in fourth dimension behind, a little bit like Men in Black. Remember that one where they go into that shop with that guy that sells these little weird guns, whatever. It's kind of, you go into, it looks it's something that you will understand. But then when you have learned to see what you need to see, you will see, yeah, that's not just base program. There's more going on here than meets the eye. Right? So that will change eventually, but you have to get out of the fourth cycle to get into where that's not the shit show. And my good friend and I, we're dealing with the fourth cycle in Australia and all of the lessons that needed to be learned, and why we need to let go of the fourth cycle and move into the fifth, because unless we want to live like that. And I did that for a period of time. The 5 times I was in Australia was all about that. And I tried, I really, and she did as well. We did all the things that were in our power, but it just became more and more difficult because the factions that were taking over did not want us there. They did not want us to succeed in that project. So how much can 2 people go up against a conglomerate of 11 different factions or what have you that are working with underworld forces and fourth dimensional programs and all sorts of psychotronic shit technology, right? How far can you push that one, right? So everything was done to our very best, but definitely we put up a good spirit to everything that we went through, especially her. She was so receptive, and we're really working good. I'm doing this deliberately because I know I have not praised her enough, and she's the root cause why I even were able to survive Australia. If I hadn't had her, I probably wouldn't have survived Australia. I wouldn't have come back though, because she was the reason why I came back as well. So anyway, point being, when we talk about food, when we talk about going into restaurants, when we go into take away also, yes, you're not going into the jurisdiction, but you're still buying the food from the ones that have engineered it or created it. So the energy is still there, even though you take it back home. And we learned the hard way eventually that either there was something wrong with the order or something was missing or whatever. So we kind of got the little subtle signs, as in don't bother order food here because you will not get what you ask for. You will get something else, which was something we experienced again and again. And even though it had been a takeaway that she had enjoyed for years, when I came there, things changed, right? Because they didn't want having anything to do with me. They didn't want me to be able to connect to them via food, because it goes both ways. Right? Eating the food, I got the energy in, and then I would be able to connect. Or they could create an elemental or link up to technology or whatever of the ones that were buying their food. And by that, having harvested potentials because you bought our food. So that's a kind of consent. So we need to understand the fourth cycle races, whatever's left of them, and how they are operating. I cannot say how far that will extend into the Western world. We are probably going to have different dynamics. And since I am moving into the fifth, and I'm just doing this bridge here, so you kind of get, when I continue to talk about the Food, Health and Environment project, I will do it from the fifth cycle point of view of the future, and not as part of the fourth cycle base program orientation, because technically I will wait for the time where there are more fifth cycle humans that have activated their potentials. And by that, that will be the people that I would do some kind of collaboration with. There are still some fourth cycle if their faction allows it, and if I keep my distance, and if I just say that's a good idea, but I'm not interfering more with it as a kind of, that's your process. You can do that. That's your investment. That's your idea. But yes, you have asked me, can I be joined in somehow, somewhere into this? If I do this and that, whatever, then I'm taking into consideration, okay, what can I do with that project? Where can I participate, and how should I participate? And always, whatever's made is by the one that gives an offer will always fall in the hands of the ones that create it, because that's something to do with, we call it patent rights, but a kind of owner's right. So that even though I might participate in it, I am not energetically, due to the law of participation and due to the law of association, I am not entangled in it. So I'll do the product. I'll be part of creating or looking from the sideline and give good advice, but that's all I will do. I will not be part of that project. It will have its own jurisdictional right from the one that's created it. So that's a different way of working with projects, which we also will take into consideration when we do changemaker hybrid projects, and we begin in the fifth cycle to work together. And I'll touch more ground with that in the whole Changemaker Toolkit course 2 to what is possible now. And later on, of course, as we go further into the fifth, I'll make Toolkit course 3, where I'll look even further into, now we know this is what's going on. These are the groups that are here. This is how we work with this. And that's the point of working in that manner. So we have a future human community that actually works within the fifth cycle. So in that understanding, that you really understand here that what I'm saying here in this podcast is what you will experience when you're still in the base program and part of the fourth cycle. When you go into the fifth, things will change. Not that it will make it more easier, but it will be built upon laws. It will be built upon respect of the different jurisdictions, and it will be built upon technology that is not interfering or harming, because those of us who do make it into the fifth cycle, we are so rare, that's why they call it preservable, that those of us who are, if there even is going to be a future human civilization in the fifth cycle, then the 50,000 of us that will make it, we need to be preserved. We can't be taken out by all sorts of low-level critters and scavengers and what is left of the fourth cycle. And that's why we need to move out of it, because if we stay there, they will harvest us to the ground and chew us up and spit our bones out, because that's what they're going for. And that's what they're going to do with everybody who is part of the fourth cycle. So we're up against time here, just for those of you who are doing this little one in the Changemaker. Yes, you want to be part of the base program. Yes, you want to change it, but you also need to respect that reality is no longer just because you have a good, kind heart and you want to do good by the humans that are around you. You need to begin to respect the jurisdictional laws and the jurisdictional battles and the jurisdictional issues that are part of the fourth cycle if you want to make it. At the best, you will eventually discover, as you have been fighting the wind for so long, as my good friend and I did in Australia, eventually just say, yeah, fuck it. I'm not going to do this, because it's just a battle after battle after battle and just repeat itself. It goes on and on and on and on. And not only have I been part of that restaurant, I come home, I need to clear out the shit, but the technology and the harvesting continues for months after. It's simply not worth it. So that's the choice. As I go, oh, I really want to go to the restaurant. Yeah, but is it really worth it? 1 hour of eating something and you come home with a package that is as big as the Eiffel Tower and you have to deal with it for months after, is it even worth it? Probably not. So we begin to cook our own food at home until we can go into what we call some kind of collaboration with other fifth cycle humans. And that will take a bit of time. And that's also a little bit disappointing because we really would like to have our little community. We really would like to have the people around us that we care about. But if they're still stuck in the fourth cycle, that's just kind of, another thing we have to let go of and figure out how to be around that, how we can be there as a kind of non-interference, being harmless, as in kind of trying to do the peaceful approach to begin with, which I always do. But if they keep hammering you, if whatever's there keeps attacking you and keeps sending things your way during nighttime, then for me as a warrior and for me having dealt with these races for so long, my energy system naturally, because of the Pleiadian genetics in it, because that's a technology we developed in the Pleiadian system, we would be peaceful when we're around peaceful people. But if we're around races and groups that were non-peaceful races, then our entire demeanor, our energy system would shift into the super soldier, which were a little bit of also some of the programs that were developed under Jerome here in the early stages of what we understand as Mesopotamia or the civilization as the reseeding, where we use that Pleiadian technology as in kind of saying, yeah, we are going into this difficult territory. We still have battles going on in the galaxies or in the inner domain, the middle domains. We still have issues going on there. So how do we develop a kind of holographic configuration that will shift from being peaceful into at the spot, change into what it needs to be, all depending on the amount, due to principle 2, of energy that comes our way. So I don't shift right away unless it's an enormous hostile entity, then I will do it quickly. But if it's kind of, it appears to be peaceful, then I'm just awaiting what happens. But then if they constantly shitstorm, then I build up my demeanor kind of records these things that they are doing. And then once I got the pattern, then it comes back full blown, full on. And then they are, then they get the blast and that's it. But then they just replicate themselves and recreate themselves on different timelines. You know, I talk about that in the advanced, the advanced energy work or the alien inserted technology. It's not a simple thing, that we're dealing with. So that comes into the understanding of food. You kind of say, okay, alien technology and food. I had not seen that one coming when I buy my bananas from Colombia, even though they're organic. I prefer to think that they're actually from peaceful races. Perhaps not. That's why we do the clearing work. And that's why we need to kind of find a producer that is not hostile, that kind of has respect, that typically in some way or some form are not interested in actually targeting the rest of the world because they're trading bananas, what have you, or they are so dissimilar that they have no interest in actually influencing us in the West or where they're exporting their bananas to, but they are having their own little thing going on in Colombia or South America or what have you, which we kind of know is not okay. So later on down the line, if it wasn't because banana has such a good effect on my body and calms my upset stomach and gives me a lot of nutrition, including calcium and other stuff that my body needs, I would probably not eat bananas. So that's again, but you could say, well, have you got addicted to bananas? Is that some kind of thing that is in the bananas? So these are also some of the questions we need to ask ourselves. So with that kind of go into a restaurant and you eat food and you say, oh, that's delicious. And then you suddenly get tired or whatever. Rest assured, you got something connected to you. Got an elemental. And I've got other experiences where we went to a restaurant in a sleeper city that were kind of lodged, stuck in time. I've got so many different variations of experiences going out eating. So I can say on a broad scale, if you choose to do that, expect retaliation. Expect you get more than the food you buy. Expect that there will be something attached to whatever's going on there, because these fronts, and I know this is the difficult part of living in the base program, we just want to say, yeah, that's just our world. Our mind would love it just to be this world. But the matter of the fact is that it's a Truman Show. It's an artificial construction, holographic interactive reality programs that are aligning with our energy system, and what we are and what we hold will drag us to different situations where if we are in our activated innovation process, we will learn the lessons the hard way because we get smacked. So we learn, don't do that. You can't go in there blindfolded. You can't ignore the signs. You can't ignore what's up in front of you. You need to deal with what is there and not pretend it's not there because you want to do your base program, human programming. I just want to go and eat at a restaurant. Why is that so difficult, right? Because the world is changing. Because as we go into the outer domain, everything will change, and all the projects that will be here will be under the outer domain dynamics. That's part of the fifth cycle. That's why it's a little less hostile. Whereas the fourth cycle, that was a colonization, hijacking, takeover, invasion strategy that were played out there. So there you understand the differences in why I'm suddenly shifting perspective when I talk about food, and when I talk about collaboration, and when I talk about the changemaker projects. I'm going into the fifth cycle because I had enough of the shit show in the fourth cycle. It is only fun for so long. Right? Been dealing with it since 2016, ended here in 2022, and that's it. Put my foot down. Not going there again. So rather just say, I'll just cut that loose that is connected to that. I'm not getting engaged in it anymore. I'm not participating in it. And if I'm around people that are still doing it, I'll just say, yeah, you go and do your thing. Then come back when you have learned it the hard way that this is not where you need to go, that you need to change your experience of reality. You need to change the way you function in reality. You need to change your ways if you want to make it. And if you want to cling on right? Star Trek. If you want to hang on, if you want to continuously do your old ways because, it's my comfort zone and, this is where it makes me feel good and this is where I normally used to thrive and this is what I normally used to do. You just ask to get whipped. Again, as I said, between two chairs. And earlier in my earlier material, I say, don't do this, don't do that. But now we are here as in kind of, I can't protect you anymore because now things are so obviously in your face. I've done the classes, I've done the teachings, you have all the access to all the information. And if you then still choose to do it, then that's not my problem, is it? Because you have the information, you have the knowledge. Whereas when I worked with the ones in 2017, I told people, don't do this, don't do that, because there the information was not there. And then I kind of say there was a reason for me saying, don't do this as a kind of a parent to a child that hasn't learned what the world is all about. As in, don't put your hand on the stove because you'll burn your fingers. So that's a bad idea. But as the child matures, the child will know that's a bad idea. And then the child will learn to use the stove in the right manner and not put the flesh on the hot plate, but actually, I can cook here. I can actually do something with the stove. So how do I then learn to use that stove and the technology? And that's where we are now. So I'm here saying, do whatever the fuck you want to do. Sorry about that. But because now you need to learn the hard way that these sciences, these ideas, they actually have implications. There are retaliation that must be paid. There are consequences of your choices now. It's no longer just, I want to do as I always do because this is a good world and people are kind and nice. Yes, most people are kind and nice, but it's what's behind them. It's the jurisdiction you enter into. It's the scenario that you take part of. It's the relative reality you go into when you go into an establishment, when you go into a shop or a restaurant or what have you, when you go into the train or there's a little bit of neutrality around trains, but not always. As you drive through different cities, the different cities have the jurisdictional claim. If they do want to harvest, they can do that. So you need to figure out, what are you dealing with here? What is the reality you have suddenly become part of? What is the environment here? And how does that affect my health, including the food that you can eat and the food that you should eat? So that's the first, what we call the exterior version of food, as in kind of, yes, you also need to look into where do you buy your groceries, right? I buy it online now. I find a little thing. Yes, it is insectoid, but they are not attacking me anymore. They kind of learned that was a bad idea. So now the deliverer man, or mostly actual males, I haven't seen a deliverer female yet. So the delivery man that comes with the groceries, they are, most of them are from Eastern Europe. And in the beginning, there was a lot of retaliation, a lot of attacking, but now they just kind of got a different approach, as in, okay, this is not the place to do that anymore. They do show color, they do show who they are, and I do get an imprint, and sometimes I do need to clean it, but it's not the same as it were, and I hope I'm not jinxing it here, so the next 3 months I will get shitstormed, right? Don't hope that. But this is how it goes. Eventually, these races, they will battle you to begin, at least me. They battle me to begin with. They do whatever they can to claim the jurisdictional right. And as we battle and battle and battle, then eventually they yield because they understand, okay, here's actually one that knows how to do this. And then they back off because then it's not worth for them anymore, because then they will begin to lose these different holographic properties. They will lose some of their technology. They will lose some of the fields they've created. They will then have to recreate it, and that takes some of their viability rate. So thereby there's a whole other game that's then going on, at least from my perspective, because I'm this old weird type of being, right? So you will experience it differently. But the signs are there. There are still these challenges that we need to learn as long as you are in the fourth cycle. And that's where you cut loose. That's why the fourth cycle is associated with the cross, where you need to sacrifice. And that's not as in kind of sacrifice as as had been taught what it is, but it is to cut something loose so that you can proceed, so you can move on, so you use the dynamics of the outer domain, where what is no longer of use of code streams and architecture and energy units and consciousness units, whatever needs to be let go so you can elevate into the fifth cycle, that's where we do it. And if we do have that as our project, which I have, then I have no issue with cutting loose what is detrimental to my project, what is preventing me from achieving my goal, which is always changing, but the goals, the minor goals that leads to the big transitional process, which I don't know what lead to. So my goal is not as I want to achieve this because that's the goal, but the goal is the process into the fifth cycle. So the goal is the process itself, the experience itself, the work with energy, the transformation of energy itself, more than reaching the destination. It's never the destination, because the destination always changes in holographic worlds, because as you change, so does the reality field perception. So you never go somewhere specific, but you are in a process of progress. So that's the goal in itself, the process of progress. So that's my goal always with everything I do, transform energy so I can progress. And yes, sometimes I'm being shitstormed and I'm then pushed back because whatever is there does not want me, or they harvest me or whatever. And then I have to rebuild and recalibrate. And I can't and not count the times now where my heart field has been demolished and completely destroyed. My energy system completely shitted and destroyed. And I had to rebuild it all over again. So that's also part, at least, of what it means to be me. And I can't say that applied to you as well out there, because I don't know. I'm not doing template readings anymore. I'm not going to do template readings because of my expanded field, because of the jurisdictional claims, because of the jurisdictional rights. So that's not going to happen. So that's for you to discover what viability rate you have, what potentials you have, and what is doable and non-doable for you. What can you do as you are in your exploration journey and your progression process, where you figure out how do you want to arrange your life, especially when we talk about food and when we talk about habits and we talk about what is possible for you to do in the base program if you choose to do the transition into the fifth. If you don't want to let go of all the base program prerogatives and what you got going there, well, then remain in the fourth cycle. Then you will probably not sense all of these kind of things, because you are kind of accepted that you remain as part of the fourth cycle. And by that, the shitstorm will not be that hard, because the shitstorm happens when you try to leave. It does not happen when you're part of it, because then you're absorbed into the group, right? You're absorbed into the cycles. You're absorbed into the energies, and thereby you become aligned with it. And by that, there is no crisis. There is no battle. There is no segregation dynamics. But the moment you choose to go into the process of progression and you choose to go into the fifth cycle, that's where the difficulties begin. So that's also a choice. So that's the first podcast I would put here, as in kind of putting out, when we talk about food specifically here, when we talk about businesses, there are the same dynamics. When you talk about going to the fitness center, or you go to a retreat, or you go on a holiday, or whatever you choose to do, the moment you decide that you no longer want to be part of the base program or the fourth cycle and the fourth dimension and whoever's there of the old world order, colonizing, hijacking, races and you want to really achieve your freedom and you want to become part of the fifth cycle, that's where all of the walls come up. That's where all of the guns are being pulled out. That's where all the cannons are being lined up. And that's where the crackers and the fireworks and the difficulty of your life will begin. And that is run both physiologically, biologically, emotionally, energetically, mentally. All levels of your three lower fields will begin to literally be used against you to prevent you from leaving the base program and preventing you from leaving the fourth cycle. And that's why we have got so many people out there that used to actually have higher viability rates, that used to have higher capacity, but eventually they gave up because that challenge with the technology and what have you, all the stuff that were going on, just became too difficult. And at the same time, the fourth cycle energies were then put behind the veil and were only accessible for the nobilities and the elite and the priesthood. The commoners no longer had access to it, and by that they became slaves of their three lower fields. So that's also why it's a difficult journey. Okay, so with that put in motion and that put in there, building further from both the how the past life can affect us in the now podcast series on the Systemic Energetic Awareness Forum on YouTube, as well as some of that information that are in the Higher Order Energetic, the Systemic Energetic Awareness Forum update on the randigreen.1. I can recommend you do that because there I'll talk about the psychological processes, what is important, going down in some of the what we call here and now experiences, because at the same time when we do go into the fifth cycle, there is also the possibility to actually go down in energy, because at that point, once we master the energies of the fifth cycle of the mental field, we are then in full capacity of our fourth, or the vibrational field and our biofield. So we can then begin to go up and down in energy, going in and out of different experiences, which I'm here showing you. Then we say, well, are you reverting to the old ways? No, I'm just picking up everything we need to pick up on, so you can make the discernment between which category are we talking about? Which level of the spectrum are we talking about? Which cycle are we now operating within? Which level of our energy system are we working from? Which type of transformational work do we need to do, biology or emotionally or mentally, to make these the tools that we can operate from and within when we are working with the energetic experiences of this relative reality that are now being influenced by incoming energies via the gates and via other civilizations and via other domains and onward and so forth. So the fifth cycle is about the true expansion of awareness and how you can operate on all different levels and how you can choose to develop all of these different levels using the different sciences, where I've provided some of it for you, and you will find, perhaps if you want to do that, you'll find someone else. But you will also see it will be more and more difficult to write different teaching systems. You will eventually also have to choose which jurisdiction do you want to belong to. And that's why I always end up saying, well, the best choice will be to develop your own teaching system, to get in contact with your own energy system, and then get the information from your own energy system as it decodes and reconnects to the reality field, which will then, via your energy system, begin to provide you with that knowledge you need to navigate in this reality. That's principle 5. Okay. So with that one said, that would be the first tutorial on food, health, and environment, where we build the bridge from the past and the present and the future, from the fourth cycle into the fifth. And then in the next tutorial, I will work from the fifth cycle perspective. Thank you.